Hello friends, this is Salil here. Today I am publishing the first lecture on quadratic equations as a part of maths course. Don't let yourself get drifted from academics in this period of lockdown. As mentioned in Gita, Karmarnyo Dhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. You are here to perform your duties, not to decide the fruits of your efforts.
Well, quadratic equations are basically a second degree polynomial equated to zero gives us a quadratic equation. To have the complete understanding of quadratic equation, we need basic knowledge of complex numbers. So if I ask you what is the solution for x square is equal to 1, you'll say, sir, x is equal to plus minus 1 square root 1, which is plus minus 1, right? If I change the question and ask you what is x square is equal to minus 1, what are the solutions of this equation, then you might go up to this step, that is x is equal to plus minus square root minus 1. But beyond this, you can't go. You are stuck here because square root of a negative number cannot be taken as far as real number is concerned. So negative numbers square root is not possible if we confine ourselves to real number. That's why we give a symbol to this. We call square root of minus 1 as I and speak it as iota, right? So this is what it is. So this is an imaginary symbol which is given to minus square root of minus 1. Of course, it is not real. That's why there is a symbol that is allotted to it. I we have quite like any other algebraic variable. Particularly, we can raise the power of I in the same manner as we do for the other algebraic variables. Like if I want to compute I square, then it is gonna be nothing but square root of minus 1, which is I square, and you know that square and square root are inverse of each other, they neutralize each other, and I get minus 1. That means I square is equal to minus 1, which is so apparent from here also. If I want to compute I cube, then it is gonna be I square into I. Can't it be broken down? Now you know that I square is equal to minus 1. That's why it is minus 1 into I, which is minus I, right? Suppose I want to compute I raised power 4, then of course this can be written as plus minus I, because after all we have given a symbol to square root of minus 1, that is I. If we wish to compute I raised power 4, it can be broken down as I square into I square, right? Okay. And which of course is nothing but I square is equal to minus 1. So that's why minus 1 into minus 1, which becomes equal to 1. That means I raised power 4 is equal to 1. Now any further power of I can be computed very conveniently. Suppose I take an example, what is I raised to the power 35. So I can break it down like I raised to the power 32 plus 3. I have broken 35 in a very smart manner. Basically, I have broken it down into sum of multiples of 4 and the remaining part. So what will happen is, it can be written as I raised to the power 4 raised to the power 8. 8 into 4 is 32 after all, into, following the law of exponent, I cube. Now you know that I raised power 4 is equal to 1. That's why it will be equal to 1 into I cube. And I cube is, of course, I cube is minus I. You can see that from here. So I cube is minus I. That's why into minus I. And thus it becomes minus I. So likewise, any other power of x can be computed conveniently. Now, what is a complex number? Well, A complex number is a pair of real numbers. A complex number which is denoted by Z, letter Z, is nothing but it is a pair of two real numbers where A and B are real numbers. They belong to real numbers and they are connected by I. So one of them is multiplied by I, that is square root of -1, and added to other real number. They can't mingle together because one of them is multiplied by I. So this is what is a complex number. Basically, it is a doublet of real number. And A and B, which are occurring in the complex number Z, B with I and A separately, A is called the real part of the complex number Z. A, which is without I, is called the real part of the complex number Z, and B, which is occurring with I, which is multiplied with I, is called the imaginary part of Z or IMZ. The real part is written as REZ, and the imaginary part is written as IMZ. Okay, it may so happen that one of them may be 0. So if my real Z, let's write the complex number. If my real Z is equal to 0, then it is called a purely imaginary number. That is, if A is not surviving, it is equal to 0, then it is called a purely. And the reason for it is because only I times something will survive. That's why it is called purely imaginary number. And if IMZ is equal to 0, that is B is equal to 0, so that I has no role to play at all, then it is called purely real number. If I take illustrations in each case, then any complex number, let's say, can be written as 6 plus 2i. In general, you can see that 6 is the real part and 2 is the imaginary part. And these two real numbers, 6 and 2, are clubbed together with I. So this forms a complex number. If the real part is 0, let's say there is a complex number Z, which is 0 plus 8i. So its real part is 0, right? Basically, it is equal to 8i itself because 0 has no meaning here. That's why it is a purely imaginary number, because only something times I is surviving, the real part is not surviving, right? In a similar manner, if there is a complex number 17 plus 0 into I, can you see that the imaginary part is 0? Imaginary part is 0, that's why I has no meaning at all, no role to play. It is after all getting multiplied with 0. That's why only the real part will survive, that is 17, and it is a purely real complex number. It is a purely real number rather. Okay, so this is what is the introduction to complex number. Well, in earlier classes, we have seen that real numbers can be shown on a line, right? In a similar manner, complex number can also be shown geometrically. But here we require two-dimensional space because it is a pair of real number. So geometrical representation of a complex number. Let us say that we have a complex number a plus ib and I want to represent it geometrically. So we need two lines, rather two axes, right? And mind it, we don't call it x and y axis. We call it real z axis and imaginary z axis. So they are real z and imaginary z axis. And this plane, which used to be called in coordinate geometry as Cartesian plane, now is called Argand plane. Argand plane, right? It is called Argand plane. So one of the axes is real, other axis is imaginary. So if we have a complex number z, that is a plus ib, that can be conveniently shown in this diagram. Same thing as we do in coordinate geometry, that is, we mark out distances along the real and imaginary axis. The distances may be A and B, So that's why the complex number, this is A and this is B, right? Like we mark out XY coordinate in coordinate geometry, we do here the real and imaginary part, A and B, and this would be the complex number Z, which is A plus IB. A plus Z, which is A plus IB. Can be shown like arrow also. We can draw an arrow starting from the origin of Argand plane and reaching out to the complex number Z. So this can be written as complex number Z also. If I take the mirror image of the Z on the real axis, that is, we locate a complex number exactly below the real axis, and that is the mirror image. This, so it is not a difficult job for you to confirm that this would be having a real part same as the real part of Z, right? But imaginary part here would be, of course, minus B. Will it be minus B or not? Because it is below the real axis. So this is called the complex conjugate. This is called the complex conjugate of Z. They are conjugate of each other. That is A minus IB. Can you see that the imaginary part has become negative? So what is the conjugate? Conjugate of Z? Conjugate of Z. Conjugate of Z, right, which can be called Z bar, is nothing but A minus IB. So remember that a complex number and its conjugate, which is shown by Z bar, it is read as Z bar, are nothing but they're having same real part, but imaginary part is negative of each other. This is what is a complex number and its conjugate. So this is the basic understanding of complex number, and remember that complex number in itself is a very elaborate chapter and it will be dealt separately as a topic. It is only as far as quadratic equation is concerned, we are dealing only the basic of complex number here. Right. Then what is the quadratic equation then? Well, a quadratic equation is a second degree polynomial equated to 0. That's why ax square plus bx plus c, where x is the variable, and abc belong to real numbers. They are real numbers and a is not equal to 0. If my a is equal to 0, then x square quotient will become 0, and that's why it will only remain a linear equation. So it will not be a quadratic equation. The mandatory condition is that my a should not be equal to 0. That is, quotient of x square should not be equal to 0. What are these ABC called? Well, a is called the quadratic quotient or highest degree quotient. Quadratic quotient or highest degree quotient. B is called the linear coefficient. B is called the linear coefficient because it is the coefficient of linear x. Right. And C is called the absolute coefficient. Well, there is an autocorrect error, the spelling mistake. In place of this spelling, you should read this. It is absolute. Right? It is not this. It is absolute. So in place of T and L are swapped. So you should read it as absolute coefficient. C is called the absolute coefficient or constant itself. Right. Now, since we know that A is not equal to 0, so I can divide by A and can write it as x square plus b upon ax plus c upon a is equal to 0. or I can break it down into x square plus 2 into b upon 2a x plus c upon a is equal to 0. I have done a smart step to complete the square. Now I can add something and subtract something to make a complete square. What do we do? I write it as x square plus 2 into b upon 2a plus the missing entry to make a perfect square is what? The missing entry is b upon 2a whole square, because this will make it a square plus 2ab plus b square kind of expression. And then of course I copy what was earlier here, c upon a, and since I have added this, so I need to subtract this also. That is b upon 2a whole square is equal to 0, is the same as the original equation, and I could divide by a because a was not equal to 0. Okay. Now you can see that it makes a perfect square. It becomes x plus b upon 2a whole square is equal to, I transfer this quantity on the RHS and it becomes b square minus 4ac upon 4a square. I square root it and I get x plus b upon 2a is equal to plus minus square root b square minus 4ac upon 2a. Transfer it over there and I get the solution as x is equal to minus b plus minus square root b square minus 4ac upon 2a upon 2a. There's a minus sign over here. Notice it carefully. Right. So these are the two values of x which satisfy the original equation. That's why they are known as roots of the equation. Now, there's a very important quantity you can see occurring over here. That is the quantity inside the radical sign. The quantity inside the radical sign is a very important quantity because it will decide whether my roots, the two roots that we have, are going to be real or they are going to be complex, because if this quantity becomes negative, then we are taking the square root of negative number, which will render complex number. That's why this quantity is known as discriminant or denoted by D. So this quantity b square minus 4ac, which will decide the nature of the roots of the equation, is called discriminant. Discriminant denoted by letter D, capital D by and large, and it is nothing but equal to b square minus 4ac, that is the expression inside the radical sign. So let us box it, and this is a very important quantity, and that will decide the nature of the root of the quadratic equation. You can see that for the quadratic equation ax square plus bx plus c is equal to 0, the discriminant is b square minus 4ac. Now, if I call the two roots as alpha and beta, then the two roots of this equation, alpha and beta, are gonna be alpha. Any one of them can be called alpha, any one of them can be called beta, minus b plus under root b square minus 4ac upon 2a, and the other root would be beta, which would be nothing but minus b minus. Once I take plus and then I take minus, would be minus square root b square minus 4ac upon 2a. So these are the two roots, one denoted by alpha, one denoted by beta. And remember that b square minus 4ac is the discriminant, which is a very fundamental quantity in quadratic equation, which will decide what are the nature of the root. What kind of roots the equation has. So in the first case, when my discriminant is greater than 0, that is b square minus 4ac is greater than 0. Now look at that. This quantity inside the radical sign in both the roots will be comfortably square rootable because it is positive. And thus, we can compute the square root of this quantity in the real numbers itself. That's why the equation has two real, both the roots are real, and they're distinct too, because something would be added and something would be subtracted. That's why there'll be different roots. Now, case 2 would be when my discriminant is equal to 0, that is b square minus 4ac is equal to 0 or b square is equal to 4ac. In that case, since the quantity inside the radical sign is 0, that's why nothing is added, nothing is subtracted. That's why the two roots should be real, no doubt, because square root, the quantity inside the radical sign is 0 after all. So the two should be, there is no problem with square rooting. Square root 0 is 0 after all. But nothing would be added and nothing would be subtracted in this case, because you can see that out here, this will go down to 0. This will go down to 0. So both will be, after all, minus b upon 2a. And thus, both the roots, alpha is equal to beta, sorry, in this case, not in this case. In this case, alpha is equal to beta is equal to minus b by 2a. So they are same root. It does not mean the equation has one root. The equation has two roots given by minus b by 2a. Well, the third case is when my discriminant is weaker than 0 or b square minus 4ac is weaker than 0. In this case, you can see that I can modify my expression. That is, I can write square root of b square minus 4ac as square root of minus 1 multiplied with square root of minus 1 multiplied with square root of 4ac minus b square. Look at the trick that we have done here. I have taken this minus sign common from the discriminant. So if this quantity is negative to this quantity, would be positive, because b square minus 4ac is weaker than 0. So 4ac minus b square would be greater than 0. This would be comfortably square rootable now. And you know that square root minus 1 is I after all. That's why it can be written as I square root 4ac minus b square. And thus the two roots in this case would be alpha would be equal to minus b plus I, right, square root of 4ac minus b square upon 2a, right, and beta can be written as beta can be written as minus b plus rather minus I under root 4ac minus b square upon 2a. You can confirm that this can be written. Let me slightly create a space on the right. Okay, this can be written as, you can confirm that this can be written as p plus iq, and this can be written as p minus iq, where p and q stand for, p stands for minus b upon 2a. Can you confirm that? Can you confirm this? Right? That is the real part of this complex number is gonna be this, both in this and in this also. That's why it is minus b upon 2a, and of course q is gonna be the imaginary part, which is this in both the cases after all, right? And thus it is gonna be square root, sorry, right, 4ac minus b square upon 2a. Will it be? So you can see that in this case the two roots are complex. And the inference, if we wish to write, the inference can be written as, in this case, the inference can be written as what? The equation has two complex roots. Aren't they complex? The equation has two complex roots which are conjugate of each other. You can confirm that in all the three cases, whether my discriminant was positive, negative, or zero, we always have two roots. And in the positive case, they are real and distinct. When it is zero, then it is real and repeated. They both coincide and become same number. And the third case, when my discriminant is weaker than zero, the two roots are complex, and most beautiful part of it is that they are conjugate of each other. In fact, you must be wondering that why always there are two roots of this quadratic equation. Whether my discriminant is positive, is equal to zero, is weaker than zero. In every case, my number of roots are two. In fact, it is not a coincidence. It is one of the fundamental theorem known as fundamental theorem of algebra. And this theorem says that, well, this theorem says that, let me draw a line to separate the discussion. This theorem says that the number of roots of a polynomial equation is equal to degree of the equation. Now you can see that the degree of the equation for us is 2, right? And thus you can see that since my equation has degree 2, is having degree 2, that's why in any case, it will always have two roots. And this is the application of fundamental theorem of algebra, which is number of roots of a polynomial equation is equal to degree of the equation. So let us revisit the discussion from here onwards. In fact, in this context, that is fundamental theorem of algebra, which says that number of roots of polynomial equation is equal to degree of the equation. So a quadratic equation will always have two roots. You can see that there are two roots of a quadratic equation, and it is the discriminant which decides the nature of the root. And in all the three cases, you can see the case 1, when the discriminant is greater than 0, it has real and distinct roots. In the case 2, when the discriminant is equal to 0, it has real and repeated. Both the root become same, but it does not mean it is a single root. It has a two root, but they have become same. And in the third case, which is this, when the discriminant is weaker than 0, the two roots are complex and they are conjugate of each other. That is the most important thing. Okay, let's proceed to further discussion, and that is relation between roots and coefficients. Suppose we have a quadratic equation ax square plus bx plus c is equal to 0, and it has got two roots according to fundamental theorem algebra, and that is alpha and beta. So my alpha, the two roots are alpha is equal to minus b plus under root b square minus 4ac upon 2a, beta is equal to minus b minus b square minus 4ac upon 2a. Right. Now, sum of the two roots, alpha and beta, can be written as alpha plus beta can be written as minus b plus under root b square minus 4ac. In fact, they have same denominator, that's why that can be taken as LCM, and plus beta's numerator is minus b. So we can write is minus b for beta minus b plus square root b square minus over here, b square minus is here, 4ac upon, since they have the same denominator, both the roots, 2a here also, 2a here also, that's why that comes out to be as LCM. Can you see that now this radical sign expression, the radical sign gets cancelled off because of plus minus, and what I'm left out with is alpha plus beta is equal to minus 2b upon 2a, that is minus b upon a minus b upon a, which is equal to minus the linear coefficient of linear x with a minus sign. Can you see that? Upon the quadratic coefficient. So this is the relation between root as far as sum of the root is concerned, right? So this is what it is. Okay. Maybe I can write it like this. Okay. Now product of root, which can be written as alpha into beta, can be written as, well, we have minus b plus square root. Let me make it thinner. Okay, square root b square minus 4ac upon 2a and multiplied with the second root, that is minus b minus under root b square minus 4ac upon 2a. Now you can see that in the numerator we have minus b plus under root b square minus 4ac and minus b minus b square minus 4ac. You know that a plus b into a minus b is equal to a square minus b square, and thus making use of this I can write it as this as minus b whole square minus this whole garbage, that is b square minus 4ac upon 4a square, which becomes 4ac upon b square cancel out upon 4a square, and thus product of root is, you can write it over here, right? Product of root alpha beta is equal to C upon A is equal to what is known as absolute coefficient, that is C is absolute coefficient, constant coefficient upon quadratic coefficient. So this is what is the relation between product of root and coefficients, right? Well, there's an autocorrect error, the spelling mistake. In place of this spelling, you should read this. So it is absolute, right? It is not this, it is absolute. So in place of T and L are swapped. So you should read it as absolute. Let us now take examples to apply the concepts that we have learned. So first question is, if L, M and N are real and L is not equal to M, then the roots of the equation this are. We have to judge the nature of the root, So out here you can see that my A is nothing but, the quadratic coefficient is nothing but L minus M, right? And B is minus 5 L plus M, and C is minus 2 L minus M. If I check the discriminant to confirm the nature of the root, so D is equal to so-called B square minus 4AC. So that is going to be minus 5 L plus M square minus 4 into A is L minus M and C is minus 2 L minus M. You can see that this becomes 25 L plus M whole square plus, because minus into minus become plus, and thus we get 8 L minus M whole square, which is definitely a positive quantity because this is sum of square of real numbers. Particularly, you can notice here that L is given not equal to M. That's why this is always going to survive the difference of the two. So if it is not 0, the square would be a positive number. So that is why this is guaranteed positive, not even equal to 0. That's why my roots are real and unequal, distinct. This is the answer to the question. Well, the second question is, we again have to judge the nature of the root of this quadratic equation. So let us expand this expression, and when you expand this expression, you can see that you get x square in all the three brackets, x square here also, in this bracket, as well as this bracket, you'll get x square. Again in this bracket, you'll get x square. Again in this bracket, you'll get x square. And thus, the expanded form would be x square, and of course, the linear would be minus 2a plus b plus c linear x. How? X is getting opportunity to get multiplied with a twice, once here, right, and once here. Likewise, b also will get opportunity to get multiplied with x twice and c also. And thus you can see that we'll get linear coefficient as this. And what about the absolute coefficient? Well, minus b into minus c, minus a into minus c, and minus a into minus b. That is going to be ab plus bc plus ca. That is equal to 0. To check the nature of the root, I compute the discriminant d, which is b square minus 4ac. So it is going to be 4a plus b plus c whole square minus 4ac, 4ab plus bc plus CA. I expand this and I get 4A square plus B square plus C square plus 2AB plus 2BC plus 2CA, and of course this I can shift little bit to write this part also, minus 4AB plus BC plus CA. Okay, so this is going to be equal to, needless to say that, 4A square plus B square plus C square minus AB minus BC minus CA. Dear friends, I send this 2 inside and keep 2 out. So it becomes 2A square plus 2B square plus 2C square and minus 2AB minus 2BC minus 2CA. You can see what is going to happen. The quantity inside the bracket consists of sum of the squares, 3 squares, that is A minus B whole square plus B minus C whole square plus C minus A whole square. You can pause the video and check out how it happens. Now you can see that the bracket consists of sum of the squares of the real number, and mind it, these brackets differences can become 0. All of them can become 0 when my A is equal to B is equal to C. This may be one of the case. That's why all may be 0. And thus, the quantity inside the bracket can be said to be greater than equal to 0. I apply equality also. If A is equal to B equal to C, then all 3 will vanish, differences will vanish, and they will be equal to. And thus, this is the condition for either real and distinct roots or real and repeated roots. So in any case, the roots are real. So this is the answer to this question. Well, the third question is this. If alpha and beta are the roots of the equation this, and alpha raised power 4 and beta raised power 4 are the roots of the equation this, then equation this has always, you have to get the nature of the root. You can see that the first given equation, that is this, has roots alpha and beta. So what would be the product of the root? I'm not interested in the sum. What is the product of the root alpha into beta? Absolute coefficient upon highest degree coefficient, and highest degree coefficient is 1. That's why I can write that product of root for the first equation, which is alpha into beta, is nothing but alpha into beta, is nothing but absolute coefficient upon highest degree coefficient, that is Q. I call it equation number 1. What is the sum of the root for the second equation? The second equation is given to be having root alpha raised power 4 and beta raised power 4, and the equation is this, So you forget about the product of root here. I'm interested in the sum of the root. What is the sum of the root? Alpha raised power 4 plus beta raised power 4 would be minus the linear x coefficient upon quadratic x coefficient. So that is minus r upon 1. So thus I get to see that is alpha raised to the power 4 plus beta raised to the power 4 is equal to nothing but minus r, that is r upon 1, so which is equal to r. So I get it equal to r. I call it second equation. Now, I need to determine the nature of the third equation, that is the given equation. You can see that the discriminant of this equation is going to be, if I highlight this equation like this, then discriminant of this equation D is going to be so called b square minus 4ac. So that is minus 4q whole square minus 4 2q square minus r, which is gonna be equal to, of course, you can compute that. 4 2q square plus r, right? Which of course can be written as 4, and inside the bracket you have 2q square. So 2q square is gonna be 2 alpha square beta square, because q is alpha beta. And what is r? R is alpha raised per 4 and beta raised per 4. That's why alpha raised per 4 plus beta raised per. What a beauty! Can't you see that quantity inside the bracket makes a perfect square? And that is 4 alpha square plus beta square whole square, which is always positive. That means one thing is sure, the roots are definitely real roots. But this question can have more than one option correct. That's why let's check the other option also. Let us say that roots of this equations are gamma and delta. They are gamma and delta. Distinguish between R and gamma. Gamma has a tail, R has no tail. So please don't get mixed up. So if I check the product of the root, gamma into delta, what is the product of the root? Product of the root is absolute coefficient. Can you confirm that? It is absolute coefficient, which is this 2q square minus r upon quadratic coefficient. So absolute coefficient is 2q square minus r. So 2q square minus r, and absolute coefficient is 1. It is meaningless to write. Anyway, I write that, which is gonna be equal to, q is alpha beta, so 2 alpha square beta square, right? And r is nothing but alpha raised power 4 and beta raised power 4 minus alpha raised power 4 minus beta raised power 4. Oh dear friends, again it makes a perfect square. But after I take the minus sign common, if I take the minus sign common, it becomes alpha square minus beta square whole square, which is always negative quantity because it is a square of the real number and there is a minus sign before. That means that, let's write one very neatly, right? Okay. That means the product of the root is negative. It can only happen when one of the number is positive, another number is negative. That means option D is also correct. One positive and one negative root. This question has two correct options. Let us take the next question. Okay. Well, if alpha beta are the roots of the equation x square minus px plus r and alpha by 2 and 2 beta be the roots of the equation this, then the value of r is, well, I've got two equations, so you can see that from here at once that alpha beta are the roots of this equation. That's why some of the root can be written as minus linear coefficient upon absolute coefficient, highest degree coefficient, quadratic coefficient, and product of root is absolute coefficient upon the highest degree coefficient. So you can see that alpha plus beta would be nothing but minus the linear coefficient upon highest degree. Highest degree coefficient is 1 after all, so that is going to be p. So I call it equation number 1. What is the product of the root? Product of the root is absolute coefficient upon highest degree coefficient. Absolute coefficient is r, highest degree coefficient is 1, so that's why it is equal to r. The equation number 2. Likewise, in the second equation, you can see that alpha by 2 and beta by 2 are the roots of this equation. So what is the sum of the two roots? Okay, sum of the two roots, alpha by 2 plus beta, 2 beta rather, gonna be minus the linear coefficient upon highest degree coefficient, that is Q. I call it equation number 3. And the product of the two root, you can see that product of the two root is alpha by 2 into 2 beta, which is again gonna be alpha beta, and it is gonna be absolute coefficient upon the highest degree coefficient, that is R. And you can see that it is not a different equation. Already you have an equation here where alpha beta is equal to R. Here also we have alpha beta is equal to R. Of course, I can use any of both the equations the same after all. Anyways, now to find alpha, what I do is I multiply the first equation by 2 and subtract the third equation from here. If I do that, if I multiply this equation by 2 and subtract this equation, can you see that it will become 2 beta after multiplication with 2? 2 beta minus 2 beta will get neutralized, and this will be 2 alpha minus alpha by 2. That would be 3 by 2 alpha. So we'll have, this implies 3 by 2 alpha gonna be 2p minus q, and thus this implies alpha is gonna be 2 by 3 2p minus q. To get beta, what do we do? To get beta, again I solve these two equations, but this time we eliminate alpha. How do we do that? We multiply the third equation by 2 and subtract the first equation out of that. So I multiply the third equation by 2 and subtract the first equation from there. When I do so, when I multiply by 2, this will become alpha. Alpha minus alpha will get neutralized, whereas this will be 4 beta minus beta, that would be 3 beta. So thus we'll get what? We'll get 3 beta is equal to 2q minus p, implies that beta is equal to, right? Beta is equal to, bring this denominator, 3 in the denominator, 1 by 3 2q minus p. What are we supposed to find? We are supposed to find the value of r, and what is r? R is after all alpha beta. That is why r, which is alpha into beta, is product of the two, that is 2 by 3 2p minus q into, let me write neatly, 2p minus q into 1 by 3 2q minus p, which is gonna be 2 by 9, right? 2 by 9, and bracket should be 2p minus q and 2q minus p. Can you see that? Is there any option which matches with this? I think yes, we have the option D, which is matching with this. So this is the answer to this question. R is equal to this. Okay? R is equal to this. Okay. Well, let us take the last question for today. And the last question for today is this, So, solve for x, and this is a subjective question. You can see a beautiful thing over here. You can see a beautiful thing over here, and that is, if I multiply the two quantities, two expressions which are in the brackets, right? If I multiply 5 plus 2 root 6 and 5 minus 2 root 6, So they make pair a plus b, a minus b. That's why it will be equal to 5 square minus 2 root 6 square, which would be 25 minus 24, which is equal to 1. Oh my God, that means product of these two brackets is equal to 1. And that confirms that 1 is the reciprocal of other. If two numbers are multiplying to give you 1, so is 1 reciprocal of other or not? So that means 1 is the reciprocal of other. So thus we can say that 5 minus, we can say that 5 minus 2 root 6 is reciprocal of 1 upon 5 plus 2 root 6. Now, to solve this equation, let us assume one of the quantities, that is 5 plus 2 root 6 raised to the power x square minus 3 as y. So what will be this? Will it be 1 by y or not? Because this base is the reciprocal of this base. So that's why it will be 1 by y. That's why 5 minus 2 root 6, 5 minus 2 root 6 raised to the power x square minus 3 can be written as, right, let me pull it down slightly so that it doesn't mix up, right, can be written as 1 by y. Dear friends, that means my quadratic equation becomes, because of which my quadratic equation becomes y plus 1 by y is equal to 10, which is nothing but what? Which is nothing but y square, which is nothing but y square minus 10y plus 1 is equal to 0. What are the solutions for this equation? Solution for this equation will be y is equal to minus b, that is 10 plus minus square root, as you know, right? B square minus 4ac, b square is gonna be 100 minus 4a into c is 4 upon 2a, and 2a is 2, which is gonna be, of course, 5 plus minus 2 root 6. What a great answer. Dear friends, now check it out. If I call this, I take the first expression, which is y, right? Y has come out to be this. So y I take as this. So that means if I say that, if I take the first root, then I can write that 5 plus 2 root 6 raised to the power x square minus 3, which was y basically, which was y, and y has got two values. It's coming out to be what? It's coming out to be this. That is, I take the positive first, 2 plus 2 root 6. Can't you see that? Can't you see that? Unnecessarily, I can write that raised power 1, because anything raised power 1 is that thing only. If the bases are equal, the exponents will also be equal. And thus you can see that, we'll have x square minus 3 will be equal to 1. And if I equate that, I get x square minus 3 is equal to 1, implies that one of the solution is, rather two solutions are x is equal to plus minus 2. Okay. If I take the value of y as 5 minus 2 root 6, then if I take y, which was 5 plus 2 root 6 raised to the power x square minus 3 as the second root, that is with the minus sign, then this is going to be 5 minus 2 root 6 which can be written as 5 plus 2 root 6 raised to the power minus 1 from here. From here, which we have already done. This can be written as reciprocal of this. And thus, you can see that if you equate the exponents, that is x square minus 3 and minus 1, then what do you get? You get here what? Let me retain this. You get x square minus 3 is equal to minus 1, which gives you what? X is equal to plus minus root 2. So thus this given equation has 4 solutions, and these 4 solutions are, I box it and you can confirm that these 4 solutions are this, plus minus 2 and plus minus root 2. That finishes the discussion for today, and see you in the next lecture.